Boundaries. Boundaries are funny. I used to think boundaries were completely real. That the boundaries separating one country from another was a real thing. The boundary of what's legal and illegal is a real thing. The boundary between what's acceptable and what's unacceptable was a real thing. But I've come to realize that boundaries don't exist. Boundaries are an idea about existence. An idea that's, in a way, completely arbitrary. But because the boundary has become the focus of attention, it suddenly seems so real. I like to think of boundaries with, I think a good example is drugs. You know? Or I'll put it this way. What separates a criminal organization from a legal one, a law-abiding one? And this one is really funny to me because out here, we see people overdosing on opiates, getting addicted to opiates, but they're completely legal. All you have to say is, oh, it's prescription. All it has to be made from is made from a pharmaceutical company, and then it can be deemed legal. On the other hand, you have these other substances that are opiates but are deemed street drugs. You have cannabis, psychedelics, like mushrooms, LSD, all of this. They're deemed Schedule 1 substances, which is absurd. Because ultimately, who decides what is deemed legal and illegal, what's deemed good or bad? Some fucking politicians. It's completely political, right? For a long time there was this craze and madness about and negative attention towards psychedelics, especially. And over the past 10 years or so, the psychedelic research has come back. And boy, the results they're finding it's beyond what any prescription, pharmaceutical, synthetic, man-made drug can do. And so you think to yourself, why was this banned, and why was this war on drugs propagated for this many years? When it wasn't a war on drugs, it was a war on people. Because you see, boundaries. This is the whole premise of boundaries. It's that if you can't physically separate yourself from people you feel disgusted by, if you can't physically separate yourself from people who are different from you, who you can't find yourself agreeing with, if you can't do that physically, then you're going to do that ideologically. I don't know why I can't speak. You're going to do that ideologically through ideas and beliefs. Because as soon as you propagate this idea or boundary or ideology about how this other group, oh, they do those drugs, they're bad people, we don't associate with them. As soon as you do that, that's a boundary. It's not a real boundary, in that the boundary is only an illusion, but to the believer of the belief, to the one who attaches him or herself to one side of the coin while trying to push away the other side, to that person, the boundary is absolutely real. Because that's what gives them a sense of identity. Because when you're identified as being the good people, the people who don't do those drugs, then immediately you create a separation from those people, the bad people who do drugs. And you condemn that side. When all that really does is create conflict. You know? Instead of, being curious, why do these people do these drugs? They must have some reason that I do not understand. Instead, you go into it with this attitude of condemnation and repression and hatred. And so in the name of love, in the name of good, what ends up being propagated is hatred, which is completely ironic. And so you see, when you create this boundary, this ideological boundary, this mental boundary, it manifests itself into physical boundaries. You wonder why kids... Let me put it this way. When people are still kids, society still has empathy for the outliers. But as soon as those kids become adults, then suddenly all that empathy is gone. And they're treated like garbage. Like they're not human. And you think, is it really these people that are the problem? Is their existence the problem? Or is it the way we've treated them that has subsequently created a looping effect whereby we're confirming the identity that we hate onto them by projecting it onto them? And so this is a weird spiel about boundaries. Kind of went all over the place. But you see, that's the point I'm getting at. There are no boundaries. Everything is connected in some way. It's just whether you are able to see it or not. And when when you see through the illusion of there being real and rigid and concrete boundaries in this real world, then you really start to see everything as connected. And you're no longer desperately trying to hold on to something, and on the other hand, desperately trying to push the opposite of that away. And you're just at peace with it all. You know? And so the universe, when I say nervous system, you think of some idea of a system in your body that performs a specific set of functions, and therefore we can label it the nervous system. But have you ever thought about the entire universe as one interwoven nervous system? Because it's really just one intelligence. And it's easy to see on the surface how absurdly different everything is. But underlying all of that difference, when you're able to see the similarity in the difference, and that's when you really see everything as connected, and that there are no real boundaries between things, and that these boundaries are completely imagined. These boundaries are ideas, they're thoughts, they're beliefs that we cling on to. And when we cling on to them, we regard them as absolutely real, because that gives us a sense of identity in this world. And the scariest thing is dropping that identity, that identification of things, of people, of yourself. But when you drop that, it's like you become a child again. You're not busy worrying about the past or the future or the next thing you have to do. You're just simply here enjoying this moment. And you see the awe and wonder of everything because you're not busy creating boundaries between you, other people, and objects. You're merged together. And so it's almost like you become the toy that you're playing with. You become the activity that you're immersed with. You become the wave underneath the surfboard while simultaneously being the surfer on the surfboard. And that's really, I think, the meaning of the state of flow, right? You lose your sense of self. And that's not any different from the mystical experience, from becoming free. See you in the next one.